As soon as that clock starts, your ass is mine.
When I met Justin Herbert, man, that dude is big as hell.
The goal is to just keep it rolling.
But come in hype because we have a lot of things to be excited about.
All right, guys, we're back with another Bolt Insight, and we are super lucky to have the man himself, the director. What's up, dude?
Kia ora, Bolt fam. Kia ora, Bolt fam of the universe, of America. It is a good time to be a Chargers fan, I got to tell you. I was actually super excited for this interview because, as you guys know, I do a lot of solo work. We're solo artists out there, but every once in a while, it's nice to have a human face to be like, oh, my God, dude, the Chargers this season. Jim Harbaugh, we got Ben Herbert in the house, all the interviews. Super excited to be here.
That's how, dude. It's my favorite thing. We get to hang out with you once a year, and it's right around this time. So the hype level is next level for this team right now, and I can't wait to get your insight on it. But let's kick off. I haven't talked to you in a minute. Last time I talked to you, we had a different coaching staff.
It seems like forever ago.
Entirely different setup. So what are your thoughts on Harbaugh and this crazy staff we have now with more coaches than I ever remember the Chargers having?
I think this hiring kind of set the precedent for me this season because of all of the pain, let's be honest, the Chargers fans have endured the last couple of seasons, last decade or so, even on the ups and downs and the good, with the Phillip Rivers of the world and the bad, the Brandon Staley's. It's been an emotional roller coaster. And I think that's made a lot of us, even me, the overly optimistic guy, a little pessimistic at times, trying to bring things down to earth. Keep your expectations realistic. But this signing of Jim Harbaugh, to me, kind of set the tone for what I wanted as a fan and what I can expect going into the future, because sometimes good things happen to good people. You know what I mean? All of us, I think we're still skeptical up to the moment that it was announced. And as much as we're all pushing the narrative and being excited about Jim Harbaugh, the reality of the situation is that it happened. And it feels almost like all of a sudden you're having breakfast with a celebrity. Like, oh my God, how am I lucky enough to end up in this situation? Let me pick this man's brain and get everything we can out of him right now. It just feels like all of a sudden everything's on the table because Jim Harbaugh happened. And if I'm feeling that way as a fan, this shock value and this tremendous respect for this coach, I wonder how it is for our players, our staff, our coaches. That demands a lot of respect. So that to me all of a sudden makes me feel like anything is possible. My eyes have opened up to the idea of Marvin Harrison even being available at pick number 5. Of course, it's been speculated for weeks and weeks and weeks, but now in a season where good things happen to good people, maybe Marvin Harrison is there at pick number 5. Maybe the stars are aligning. It just feels like finally the waiting of years and years and years for this team to finally turn a corner that's real, that's, backed by data and the success of Jim Harbaugh. It feels like it's finally arrived, and us as hurt and battered Chargers fans are starting to come out of our caves a little bit from, the let's keep our expectations realistic to, okay, I think the hype is starting to build again. You got to be broken down to be built back up. And the Staley breakdown surely helps us, appreciate what we have in Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said a little earlier, the intent, the craziness of the staff, and Ben Herbert recently had a press conference, and everyone's back in the facility now and they're talking. I was so happy when I saw Harbaugh coming in doing press conferences and stuff. I eat it up. But looking at Ben Herbert and the intensity in that guy, and I don't remember the last time I ever heard an interview with the strength and conditioning head coach. You know what I mean? So what are your kind of takeaways from him? Because that's where it all starts now. They're not on the field. They're not running plays. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're working with him, getting their neck stronger. All the stuff he went through in that interview was fascinating. What did you take from that?
Well, first off, like you mentioned too, it's crazy that you don't see anybody in that level of staff get interviewed ever. And the fact that Ben Herbert is front and center representing the Chargers as a strength and conditioning coach, that tells you how big of a deal this coaching hiring was. That hire was, I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. It felt like he was getting bedded in that Oregon program or in that Michigan program, and that our expectations were that, he was going to stay there. Coming to the Chargers is a huge blessing because I feel, and I think when you watch programs like All or Nothing with the Michigan Wolverines,
it was great.
You get an inside look of how they build their culture, and it's very intense. especially the workout program. If you take a look online at some of the behind the scenes stuff of their workout programs in Michigan, it reminds me a little bit of that documentary on Netflix where they covered the Florida Gators back in the Tebow days, how intense and crazy that program was behind the scenes. It builds this brotherhood of intensity. You know what I mean? And that, I feel, is why Ben Herbert is such a strong presence for this team, because you're building a championship mentality from the ground level. And that is something that I think the Chargers may have sorely lacked. I know there's been a lot of concerns about health. That's another thing that Ben Herbert brings a lot of confidence for me to. I love that what he was quoted in saying that I'm not trying to break you. I'm making you harder to break. Dude, finally, let's go.
Oh, God. When he said that, dude, I got so jacked up. I was so happy to hear him say that.
How huge of a stark difference is that from what we've had the past decade to like, wow, these guys really know what they're doing all of a sudden. Yeah, it's enough to get you jacked. Yeah,
dude, it's super exciting. And, all the players are back and everything's kind of coming together now. And coach seems happy, that his guys are in the building. So, like, what are your kind of thoughts on what we need to do, as players that are on the team right now? What do we need to do to kind of get ourselves ready for this, Harbaugh era?
It really think a lot of it, I think, is instilled in the new staff, because let's be honest, this isn't just a new coaching hire. This is a complete revamp, from the ground up. Everything has been stripped down and rebuilt in Harbaugh's image. And I think a lot of it has to come down to, it's going to take a little bit of time to instill all of these, new culture aspects to the players. There's going to be a new way of doing things that I feel is much more efficient. One of the first things that Harbaugh said in his interview is he's excited about the weight room because it's much more organized. Like, that's the little details that I think build championship teams. You need to be so oriented on every piece that's going to bring up your players. And I think the players are going to take some time to embrace that. And that's one thing that I really can appreciate about Coach Harbaugh. And this is something I told my wife last night. It's kind of crazy going from, and again, we're not trying to slam Brandon Staley, but it's important for us to recognize this. Brandon Staley, when I heard him speak, he did feel like he was in control, and he had, he was a very well-spoken person. But what he spoke about, mainly in my, opinion, was how he had control of the situation, how he had control of the defense, how he had control of our misfortunes, that he gets it. He's on top of it. Where every time I hear Coach Harbaugh speak, it's about building his players up and getting excited about his players' potential and finding the very best version of every player and every coach, which is also super important. He hugely emphasizes his coaching staff, which really makes me feel like this is what he calls a pro's pro. He understands at a very profound level what it takes to operate a football team. It's not about being in control. It's about building up the most lethal version of these players as possible. So I think we're honestly going to see some players that have not had a lot of success in the past few systems, including players that were once really great and then maybe took a dip like Derwin James a little bit, enter into the fold of the Harbaugh era and find new life. And that includes guys like Isaiah Spiller and Quentin Johnston, who maybe found it a little bit tough to get going in those systems. So, yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of embracing of this new culture, of this new mindset. But I think ultimately we're instilling a culture that is going to last beyond the Harbaugh days. That's why Harbaugh is so important, was such a big hire, is that, yes, right now we're all excited about his rule over the Bolt Kingdom and his influence, but he's instilling a culture that, like every program he's touched so far, should instill into the future. It should live on into the future. Every program that he's been with, he rescued them, and they're still thriving today. So I think it's an important aspect for the Chargers team, the players, the coaches, to start really understanding and embracing these cultural changes.
100%. And then, free agents, we're starting to pick up a few. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We're getting a lot of these kind of players that were once touted like really solid players like Hayden, Hurst and some of these tight ends and some of these guys. They're coming to us on these really short, very team-friendly deals. What are your thoughts on kind of, is that a Harbaugh doing? Is that something that these guys want to come and play and build something special here? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Chargers, honestly, their cap situation is going to create a lot of need for them to pursue deals like that. And it's a situation that was put in front of them because of the previous staff and regime. And it's one that I think they're navigating very smartly. I think in particular, Joe Ortiz is doing a very good job with what I can call the Harbaugh effect. He understands he understands the influence that Harbaugh has over the league and what his name carries throughout, respect in terms of the players. And I think he understands that, if we need a guy to come in and play at a value, and we need a guy to step in as a transitional player, Harbaugh and his influence should allow us to get contracts like that. So Hayden Hurst, I think he's a solid player. I think, honestly, this year's class of tight ends, you might be able to find a pretty decent one in the first, 3 or 4 rounds. And of course, that position taking a couple of years to develop, you want a Hayden Hurst on the roster, for at least a year or two. Some of these other guys in shorter contracts, it does feel like the foresight of understanding where you're going at in the draft this year versus what you can be targeting in the future is being thought about right now. Like, yes, we understand that tight end, we can maybe go after Brock Bowers, but we can't limit ourselves to only going after Brock Bowers because we have no tight ends. We got to make signings right now. It feels like the foresight of what you want, what's going to be available in each round, and what you can attack in the future is all being kind of thought about right now with these intelligent signings. And yes, not too flashy, but as we continue to get more money, starting in 2025 when the money is ridiculous, I think you're going to see a lot more Harbaugh influence with bigger names on maybe smaller deals than we expected.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I want to shout you out because you did call a Harbaugh guy that we just signed, fullback Ben Mason. You hit that one right on the head. What are your thoughts on, I like having a fullback on our roster. There's something about having a fullback just makes me feel happier about our run game. What are your thoughts on Ben and, getting a fullback?
Ben Mason was an easy one to look at, considering his time in Michigan with Jim Harbaugh and then going to his brother at the Ravens for a short stint there. Let's be clear. A lot of people were like, oh my God, I don't know about this Ben Mason guy. He didn't make the cut with the Ravens. Well, he was competing with Patrick Ricard, who's one of the best fullbacks in the entire league. But in his time in Michigan, he was a very good player. More of this tight end fullback hybrid. You can utilize him a little bit as a utility back, throw him a couple passes here and there. It feels like the perfect mix of what the Chargers wanted in get running more I form, power run, as well as utilizing Justin Herbert's passing ability. Like if you need another guy underneath, like Ben Mason can definitely do that. I think the signing of the position gets me more excited than the player in this instance. I think Ben Mason's going to do very solid, and I think he can develop into a very good player, but bring me the fullback back, dude. Like, I'm excited to see him back in the formation. Yeah. I was a huge Xander Horvath guy for that reason. I was like, please, let's get, some space in there for Austin Eckler. Yeah. But even the fact of adding these bigger backs like Gus Edwards with a fullback, with the mentality of ground pound, punching in the mouth kind of football, it gets me excited for what the Chargers, in particular, Justin Herbert, is going to have to work with in 2024.
I just feel like there's going to be so much pressure off of him. Not only them being able to pin their ears back and get after him, they're not going to have that ability to really do that because we're going to have a run game and they're going to have to count for that. So watch out, guys. Here we come.
I'm going to ask you a question. I wonder how much the Chargers may be wanting to utilize Justin Herbert's mobility in terms of not just scrambling out of the pocket, but quarterback run, design runs.
I think
in 2024.
There's something about the coaching staff that it felt like he was playing not to get hurt a little bit this last year. And he ended up getting hurt. So like when you let him kind of go and get out of the pocket and move, he's amazingly quick. He can, we need to have him do a little bit more of what Mahomes does to beat us all the time, where he gets just out of the pocket. You can't contain him. You're playing man most of the time on all the guys or putting coverage over everything. And then he can just run. I want to see him do it more. And I think he will definitely under the staff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a sweet spot. A lot of people are like, he's going to be the new Lamar Jackson. I'm like, he's athletic, but not Lamar Jackson. However, the Patrick Mahomes sort of style of play, I can get behind that. Let him play a little more loosely. Trust his mobility in terms of his, protection and passing plays. I like it.
Exactly. So, and I want to pick your brain too, because it's mock draft season. We are getting closer to the draft, and everyone's got ideas, man. Everyone's got what they want to see, what they think is best. Me personally, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, I'm taking him. If he's not there, I'm trading back and going after some other players and trying to get some more capital. What is your approach? What do you want to happen?
I remember back when I was a kid, Pokemon was a pretty big deal. and we'd go around trading Pokemon cards. And there's this one kid. Everybody knew what he was, but he's a very good, trader. He was a very good Pokemon card trader. And he had this coin. And he says, heads, you can choose one of these 3 cards for that card. And tails, I get to choose one of these 3 cards for that card. The trick was, it was a double-sided coin. Both sides were heads.
No.
I feel that way about this upcoming draft. Both sides are heads. Like if you're talking Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm good either way, man. Either way, I'm winning. This is such a blessed position to be in if you're the Chargers, because you're getting something almost generational. I would say generational in these talents, but for different reasons that you can build, behind a system like what Harbaugh and Roman are building. You can build a successful offense revolving around either of those players' talents. And let's not forget Rome Odunze, who's also a fantastic option for the Chargers in particular in 2024. My particular stance on it is, yes, it's hard for me to be like one side or the other because both are so enticing. And quite honestly, if we choose the other side, I'm not going to be disappointed at all.
Sure.
If it were my preference, though, and I was in the captain's chair, and Marvin Harrison is there at 5, there's just absolutely no way that I'm passing up on that talent. And yes, I understand the Neighbors narrative. I understand that there is probably a higher ceiling there, depending on how you slice it. But Marvin Harrison just feels like the kind of player that you build a future around, that has, the scheme proof and any defense that he can beat. Like, it just feels like he's the best starting piece to building this offense's wide receiver room. Because let's be honest, Quentin Johnson's going to take some time. Josh Palmer, we don't know what's going to happen after this season. And the wide receiver room doesn't look good. You're almost starting from scratch here. And if you're looking for one of the best possible solutions to begin that rebuild a wide receiver, retool a wide receiver, I think Marvin Harrison is probably as good as it's ever going to get via the draft. So, I'm at the Marvin Harrison train. I would be happy with any of the top 3. The only thing I kind of steer away from is the O-line pick at 5. I can maybe get behind it with the trade down. But outside of that, I think the Chargers cannot miss at 5 with the options available.
Yeah, I think Minnesota is the one I'm looking at just because they have 2 firsts. And if you can get into 11, who's to say Brock Bowers isn't there? Who's to say you couldn't get like a Fuaga or one of these just grinders? Somebody's going to punch you in the face. So this is that weird year where we're early. We were picking early, so you can kind of formulate what you think's going to happen. Last year was nearly impossible. It's like who's going to be there when we're drafting. So I don't know. Just the excitement level for this is pretty crazy. Are there any players outside of the first round that you think would be great Chargers, and especially for Coach Harbaugh?
I think one thing that gets me particularly excited about this draft is our position. And that carries through every round in this draft. Yes, the Chargers have pick number 5, but then you talk about round 2, pick 37's at the top.
Yeah.
Pick 69's at the top. And every single year, we're all shocked and amazed, and I can't believe this happened. When it happens every year, players slip into the second round, players slip into the third round, fourth round, et cetera, et cetera. And knowing Joe Ortiz and the Ravens style of drafting, I think best player available is really on the board here. And I think there's going to be some dogs. Not to mention in the second round, my God, think about the quarterbacks. I just tweeted this a couple of minutes ago. Think about all the quarterbacks in this draft that are going to go in the first round. Williams and May and Daniels. And I think there's about 6 of them, about 6 quarterbacks that I think are going to go in the first round. Mainly because there are so many desperate quarterback needy teams this season. My God, you talk about every quarterback needy team. Everyone wants to trade up. Everyone's selling the farm to get that quarterback, to have the Houston Texans effect of, oh my God, they found their quarterback. Now they're very legit. I think everyone's kind of fresh off that idea and wants to get in on that action.
Yeah.
That's going to push talent down the board, even in the second round, my man. Like 6 quarterbacks, we're going to see some talent at 37. So what gets me excited is about who's going to still be there. Are we going to see a Kool-Aid McKinstry on there? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
cool. We're going to see Chop Robinson. I don't know. Somebody's going to slip. And I'll be there for whoever decides to be available to the Chargers at 37, even if it's a position not necessarily of need for the Chargers. Sometimes that value is just too much to pass up on. Second round guys that I would be excited about that I do think will be available in a realistic, like nobody slipped here is who we have. I love Kamari Lassiter. I love Mike Sanders still is probably one of my favorites in the second round, even though some people consider that a little bit high for a nickel. There's some corners. I think if you're going to go wide receiver in the first round, the corners are particularly what get me excited in the second.
That's awesome. And then the running back room is kind of we're reshaping that thing. And who knows, there's rumors of Dobbins. We already got Gus Bus. So what do you think? Are there any, because that's the other weird one is that there's like third round and on is kind of the running back zone where we could take one. Is there one guy that kind of rises to the top a little more than the others for you?
If he's available, and again, who knows? It's going to be an interesting year with our draft position. But my guy's Trey Benson. I feel like he carries all the traits, and he carries, honestly, a lot of the tools that you're looking for from an RB1 of the future. I think it's a great situation for him being paired up with Gus Edwards for the first couple of seasons. And I think that he can carry the torch in a very run-oriented offense in a couple of seasons now. As for what I feel is realistic in this class, because this class has some pretty good players in it, but it's not as saturated as we've seen in other seasons. Like I don't think we're going to see a guy in the second round. In years, in recent years, we've seen guys in the first round, like, Bijan Robinson. I think classes like that are coming. And I think the Chargers, they might want to grab their complementary back of the future in this draft, to pair with Gus Edwards. And in the future, maybe even as soon as next season, pick up their RB1 of the future for Harbaugh and Ortiz. And who knows, maybe we see an Edwards squared after next draft with Donovan Edwards, who I think would fit beautifully in this offense. Cool. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to be looking for like an RB2 kind of guy, I think Blake Corum certainly is going to be a guy that the Chargers will be looking at. I really like guys that maybe have a bit more catching ability. I think Ray Davis could be awesome. Marshawn Lloyd is certainly a good option there too. So, I mean, these guys that can be a nice complementary back in the future do get my eye right now, because we can use them right now with Gus Edwards, and then they can complement another running back one prospect in a future draft.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's so much fun hanging out with you and, talking Charger football. And we really appreciate everything you do, man. Your channel's amazing. And if you haven't, I don't know why you wouldn't have by now, but go check out the Director's YouTube page, because it's just get me fired up, bro. You do awesome work. We appreciate it.
It's the hype videos. That's it. That's floating.
Oh, dude, next level. You're a next level editor, so you get everyone fired up.
Much love.
So we appreciate it, man. And let's definitely talk soon.
Sounds good, my man. Sounds good. Get ready for an awesome. I don't think even we as fans are prepared for how unique and awesome this experience is going to be for us as fans.
I'm ready for the warm embrace of Harbaugh and his whatever he does to this team, and just take me off. Take me.
We are orphans that have been adopted, my man. It's finally time. Give me that puppy.
Let's go. So, all right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.